Everyone thinks that teens in our world today use alcohol, tobacco, or drugs to cope with everyday struggles. You may think they do.
But they don't. Welcome to the But They Don't podcast, a podcast for teens by teens. Join us as we cover substance use prevention, mental health, community conversations, and more.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the But They Don't podcast. I'm Katie.
And I'm Elle.
So, Elle, this is your first time on the podcast, so tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, I really like the Beach Boys.
Oh, that's cool. So we are so excited to start the community service series that we will be doing a little bit. So we have our first guest to interview with us today in the studio.
Today we are having a conversation with Chief Beach and Staff Sergeant Griffin from the Pickens City Police Department.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Welcome to the But They Don't podcast. We are excited. We are very, very excited to start off the series with you guys.
To begin with, can you introduce yourself and tell us how you serve on the Pickens City Police Department team?
We're looking at each other. Who goes first?
I will go first.
Thank you.
I'm Staff Sergeant Griffin. I've been with the city of Pickens for about 8 years. I done road patrol, was a SRO. I believe I was some of y'all's SRO at one point.
I remember you.
And now I do investigations, mainly narcotics.
And I'm Randall Beach, been with the Pickens Police Department 1 year, and I've been a police officer for 41 years.
That's awesome.
Glorious long years.
It's a lot of time.
And I like the Beach Boys.
Aw.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start off our interview. So we have some specific questions that we have collected and we want to ask you guys.
So the first question was, what effects does substance use have on Pickens City?
Well, you're the narcotics guy.
Yeah, I would say it directly involves everything that we deal with, from assaults to larcenies. A lot of people don't realize that it's widespread throughout the county. Unfortunately, we see shopliftings and even from domestics to car break-ins. Some of them are, motivated by money or, trying to obtain some good, but a lot of them goes back to a narcotics issue. We see a lot of people out here on the street that are stealing to feed their habit, and then also assaults occur because of narcotics. And so, unfortunately, it affects a lot of the things here in the city that we deal with on a daily basis.
I just add that last year, close to 700 arrests by the Pickens Police Department, and close to 60% of those were for narcotics offenses, and then probably as high as 80% involve narcotics. Mm-hmm. It's pretty high.
Yeah, it's high.
Yeah. So our second question is, what challenges do you guys face in addressing substance use and its consequences?
Well, unfortunately, in our job, we do face a lot of obstacles. We have, for one, here in our city, one thing that we acquired last year was Chief Beach that's really taught us a lot and helped us overcome a lot of the obstacles that we faced. And last year, we really, I would say, record numbers in narcotic offenses and enforcement. So I think that we really made a big impact here in the city as far as drugs go. We've had many people in our investigations tell us, like, we won't even come close to the city anymore with drugs because we know y'all are on it, which is a good thing. And that was, there's a lot of, it's just within your own department and things out in the community that we face that kind of sets us back. I think we've overcome a lot of those things, and we've really made a big difference last year, especially.
I think so.
We want to keep that momentum going into this year, of course.
For me, a personal challenge is one of our goals is that we seek to achieve a city that is as free of crime as possible. And that's pretty lofty, almost impossible, but if you don't shoot for that kind of goal, you're just giving up already. And for me, after over 40 years of being a police officer, I just get sad for the broken lives, and as much fun. This is the greatest job in the world. I love every second of it. I love being a police officer. It is fun catching bad guys and bad girls, but you still go home sad with a lot of broken stuff, and that's challenging for any police officer to deal just sort of our own mental aspect of it.
Yeah, that sounds tough.
Yeah, we see a lot of impact on teens too when it comes to seeing their parents being arrested. And that's why we started this podcast, just so they are aware of all the drugs out there and they know what the effects are.
And even like
families.
In the schools with kids who get involved early because of their parents or their friends.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But despite those challenges, how can Pickens City strive towards combating those effects?
Staff Sergeant?
Well, I would say to keep doing what we're doing. Are you talking about the community or us? Or rephrase the question. I'm sorry.
So despite those challenges, how do you think Pickens City, as a community, and maybe even y'all's point of view as well, strive towards combating those effects?
Yeah, I think doing what y'all are doing here is great. I mean, our relationship with behavioral health and other organizations doing the same kind of thing, kind of getting that word out, I think is very important. And just kind of what y'all were talking about a minute ago to kind of hit on is just what y'all see in y'all schools and with your friends and their parents, and we see that on calls, we see that in our investigations, and we love information. A lot of our investigations, they start from information that we receive either from a citizen or someone making a complaint about something they noticed, because even though we are a smaller jurisdiction compared to some of the other cities and counties around us, we stay busy. We stay very busy. So information that we can get from people saying, that something don't seem right with, my neighbor, or something don't seem right with something going on next door or down the road or whatever it may be. It might be something that we just didn't notice. And it may be just something subtle that they see on a daily basis because they're close by, or something that's a routine kind of thing. So information is important on kind of from an enforcement effort. But I think as far as building relationships with y'all and other organizations that kind of get that word spread and educate people, I think is important as far as being proactive.
I think y'all know that, like Chris is saying, we need information, and people do tell us things, whether you want to use the word snitching or under the table, anonymous, tipsters. Y'all know the youth culture, and the youth culture is silence. You all know who is involved in things in your school, but it goes against the grain of everything in youth culture to tell until it becomes a crisis. And we understand that, and I understand the youth culture, but we do need to know things the sooner the better. And that's the other sad part for me, understanding that culture and how difficult it is for us to get information within the confines, let's say, of a school.
Yeah.
Is there like a hotline, an anonymous hotline that people can submit information
We don't
to?
have one here. I mean, I tell you, our social media, if you don't follow Pickens Police Department Facebook, it's kind of like not knowing who the Beatles are, okay? or the Beach Boys, let's say. That is a mechanism through Messenger to get things to us. I've been in other jurisdictions where there are even high school sort of crime stoppers in big cities. We don't have that here. We enjoy the luxury of small town, and word travels fast.
And one of my goals, as far as the social media thing goes, and me and Chiefs kind of talked about it, is to one day have an app. Some other jurisdictions and agencies have an app, and so in that app there would be resources and information, and there would be a tip line or just in general, whether it's narcotics or just any kind of crime that you know that's going on. And that's another little thing that we're working on maybe down the line to get going. But yes, either calling the police department messaging on our social media page. And I understand some people want to remain anonymous. And if you do make a phone call, there's no pressure to leave your name or number or anything like that.
Yeah. So our next question is, what can be done to discourage the youth from using these drugs?
Well, just a minute ago when we were talking, it kind of went in my head that, one thing I want to put out there is that we don't look to put everybody in jail. That is not our goal. Our goal is to make a difference in our community and in people's lives. We have people that work directly with us in our investigations that have substance abuse issues. And we'll tell them straight up, like, our goal is to see you do better. And that's what we want. So it's not a thing that we want to go out there and, unfortunately, put everybody in front of a judge. But unfortunately, sometimes in situations where it's an ongoing problem, we get to that step. And, I think what we're trying to do here is prevent that from even getting to that step, which I think is a positive thing.
You're asking about how to discourage. I know it discourages me from bad behavior, the possibility that I might get caught. So having an active police department, whether it's speeding or littering or trafficking in methamphetamine, the knowledge that you've got an active, and I don't want to use the word aggressive, but a police department that loves their job, wants to be out there and in the community and try to create an atmosphere of almost omnipresence, that we're there watching, not in big government looking over your shoulder at everything, but I think that's a big factor of being caught. Consequences don't enter into people's mind. They don't think long term. It's short term. I'm the same way about even my own behavior at home and picking up my dirty clothes. I don't want to get caught by my wife, so I throw them under the bed.
And I feel like just, people look at police officers and agencies as, all they want to do is put people in jail, and that's how they discourage, and fix people, and that's not how we want to operate. So,
yeah. So, just to kind of go off that consequences type thing, why do you think people try to hide it? If they know that they're going to get caught, why do you think they try to hide it?
Well, I think like Chief just said, I think most people are afraid of getting caught. And unfortunately, when people don't get caught, sometimes it kind of builds their confidence and they could continue to do it. Like we see it with break-ins and drug use. You see one person like breaking into a car several times, and unfortunately, they just don't wake up one morning and say, I'm going to stop doing it without some type of intervention, whether it's, some type of services or unfortunately run into us. So, I think it's something that, obviously with teens, I think, things like vaping, they see it as a cool, peer pressure kind of thing. And my friends are doing it. I like the flavor of it, whatever it may be, that they're vaping. And, until they get caught, sometimes it's, I'm getting by, so I don't really have any motivation at this point to stop. So,
to continue talking about vaping, what do you think are options for addressing underage tobacco use like vaping? And is there a big deal with vaping in this? Is there a big problem with vaping in the city?
You and I might even disagree. We have a lot of discussions about this. I'll let you go first.
I say yes. And just in my time as an SRO and seeing what our SROs now are dealing with, I would say yes. Compare it to other, jurisdictions or cities or states. I don't know how we compare as far as, Pickens County, South Carolina. I would say that we do. Just in our schools, I think our SROs see it a good bit. Sometimes it comes in waves, or they just getting away with it. I don't know. But unfortunately, it is a problem because it's something that kind of sticks out as, it's a cool thing to do. It's just, once they came out with them, it was especially vapes. You don't see too many cigarettes these days. When I was in high school, that's what you typically saw. Now it's all vapes, and they're easy to hide. And it's unfortunately some of these manufacturers are making it easier for for teens to get away with it and to hide them. And, there's even things out there now that, assist that even more, like book bags and jackets and things. And, we address it, and I know the school administration has addressed it, and unfortunately it's a very time-consuming thing. I don't think people realize, me and Chief spoke about this one day, is that how much time it takes away from our SROs in our schools and our principals and teachers having to address vape problems in the schools when they can be doing other things.
And I don't get nearly as alarmed, and we've had discussions about this, whether it's, smoking a cigarette or, I believe, trust me, I am 100% against, underage drinking, vaping, all these sorts of things. But there are millions of adults who did the cool thing when they're in high school and middle school. And it was a phase. They went through it, and they've moved on, and now they're doctors and lawyers and police officers, and they did the cool thing. It's dangerous, but because there's a lot of them that stayed basically in the 13th grade the rest of their life and never got out of it. So please don't think that. But I worry more about the devastation in lives where I see adolescent sexual activity that destroys lives, probably more than vaping. And we spend so much time of vaping in the schools that it takes away from classroom time. And we've, just like the police trying to be everywhere, like all the administrators, it's like the vape police everywhere. And it has consumed all of us to be who's vaping, who's vaping, who's vaping. I worry about a lot of other behaviors.
Well, do you have any advice for teenagers who get addicted to any type of nicotine in their earlier teenage years?
I was going to stop and say, don't vape, don't drink, don't involve yourself. It's what do we do? I do two things every day at the Pickens Police Department. We tell the truth, and we what? Follow the law.
Vacuum.
Well, we vacuum. he caught a snake today too. We do that too. But we follow the law. We obey the law. Right now, is it legal for, let's say, a 16-year-old to walk in a store and buy these products? No. So we have a law problem. If we're following the law from the retail dealer to the students or to the one in that cool culture, I'll get it for you, I've got a big brother, I'll steal it from my parents or whatever else. If we're following the law, we're going to diminish 90% of this activity. That's kind of where it starts, whether it's the law of the classroom, the law of your house, speed limits, all of these sorts of things. And I think that's the starting point.
Yeah. But for kids that are like already involved in it, do you have any advice for them for like reaching out to get help to stop?
I think that it's relational. The youth culture and being cool. When I find some young person really develops a relationship with a coach or a particular teacher or a youth pastor or a neighbor, and they have a stronger connection to the adult world, all this stuff is not nearly as important in terms of the youth culture and being cool and being involved in that. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, so our next question is, so we know that there's a rise in drug products like Delta 8, Delta 9. In your opinion, do those drugs lead to other drugs? Staff
Sergeant Griffin is our world-renowned expert in Delta 8 and Delta 9 products.
I was actually going to pass that one to you.
No,
well, just because. So yes, I've had some experience, with some cases recently, with Delta 8 and Delta 9, and I would just say, I'm not an expert in it by no means, but I will say that I think that our state is just in a limbo right now where we need to create some laws surrounding Delta 8.
I'd say, yeah, I asked you the question, Al, about, kind of whatever year old possess, kind of 17-year-old possess tobacco products. Can they? No. Can they possess Delta 8 or let's say, or Delta 9?
I don't know.
It's really not clear in the law. Yeah. It's not regarded as tobacco products, so they can walk right in and buy it. And that, are you kidding me?
And so, and I would just say, right now we have no statute that we can write anyone for as far as Delta 8 goes. And if you look at the Hemp Farm Act, it kind of goes into what is legal, what is the only exception to the Controlled Substance Act and the laws, which is a Schedule 1 controlled substance. And the only exception is 0.3% of Delta 9, no more than 0.3%.
Delta 8 or Delta 9?
Delta 9.
Okay.
So any other variant of Delta, or excuse me, any other variant of THC is not outlined in that act. So the Attorney General kind of released a brief opinion on it, and that's it was kind of like a case by case basis. So we've had issues here in the city with Delta 8. I've actually spoke with some of your peers about Delta 8 in this investigation, and Delta 8, the SLED chief stated that their analysis of Delta 8 and Delta 9 was substantially different. So it's just because it's one number off, don't mean that it's not that bad. I mean, it's Delta 8 and Delta 9. They're basically the same thing. They're saying they're completely different. They have a different effect on you. And so, and I've asked some of your peers that we've caught, and they've said, yeah, it relaxes me. It's more of that, that high feeling, unfortunately, that Delta 8 kind of brings on. And now we're looking at an issue of, even like a DUI, it's any substance that could impair your ability to, drive that motor vehicle safely. So now we're looking, even if it's marijuana, there's that case right now with American Idol contestant. So now we run into is if someone's using Delta 8 and is involved in a wreck, is it something that could have hindered their ability to drive that motor vehicle safely?
So,
but we don't.
Well, I was going to say people are pretty tricky too. That's challenging for us, and whether it's any kind of Delta product, especially if it's I go to Hobby Lobby, get some little plastic containers, go home to my home computer, do a little graphics work, print out a label, slap it on there, and put my real marijuana in there, and the police like, oh, this is Delta 8, this is Delta whatever. It's not like tobacco products and alcohol with tax stamps and some of the others, and there's a lot of that trickiness. I can, put vodka in my Gatorade bottle and walk around school knowing, oh, he's got Gatorade. I mean, where I'm coming from, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Delta 8 and Delta 9, I know the difference between them, not that well.
How do you know? Ooh.
Because
Okay.
we went to a Tall Cop seminar, and he kind of talked a little bit about it. So Delta 9 is like the standard original marijuana, and Delta 8 is kind of like the half kind of, that makes sense.
Like a
So
close cousin.
Yeah, so can y'all kind of touch on like the differences between them?
And unfortunately, I can't. I'm not an expert on the Delta 9.
It's the THC.
Yeah.
It's the process they're going to try to remove the THC, so you're at a certain percentage, and it's kind of like the difference between, grain alcohol and, a light beer, diminished alcohol content, all the way from an O'Doul's to, Grey Goose vodka. That's the difference.
I just wanted to clarify. So Delta 8 and Delta 9 aren't considered illegal as cannabis?
It's not clear.
Well, according to the Hemp Farm Act, it says anything no more than 0.3% of Delta 9 THC. So if it could, and that's why if you see the product, it'll say, less than 0.3% of Delta 9 THC. So that is the only exception to the law, which is.
And then how do you test that? If you have a container, there's no way to test that on the spot.
Yeah, so
your blood alcohol, I can take you to the jail, and you can do a breathalyzer. We'll know what your blood alcohol content is. We don't carry little kits around. We have radar guns for speed, detection, but we don't have a means to say, aha, it's marijuana.
Yeah. And to kind of go back to what you were saying, and I'm sure he probably had a lot of good info there, because I think some of our officers went to it as well. But, I just don't think there's been enough really research into the effects of it and what's the big difference between the two. Like I said, in the sled chief didn't go into a lot of detail either. It just specifically said there was a substantial difference, and I guess the analysis of the two. So unfortunately we don't know it, but I just know what I've asked other people. Unfortunately, they were teenagers, that were in possession of these products and that admitted to using them, and they, just from a user standpoint, they told me there is a big difference.
I think we got to be fair. There are, Chris said about research, at least anecdotally, there are a lot of people out there that will tell you this is helping them. And I've got friends, in different states they've moved to states where they could have cannabis products for seizures and all sorts of things. We're not doctors. We're trying to stay in the confines of the law. So I want to be fair to people that are really big advocates of hemp farming and the potentials in all that. Yet, maybe it's just my age. I'm kind of anti-marijuana, and I've got friends that we vehemently disagree about it.
Either way, even if you're pro marijuana or against it, should be common ground that it's not good for underage people to use it.
Nice call, L. Yes.
Yeah. So, our next question: is there a correlation between substance use and involvement in the criminal justice system?
Yes.
That was a very simple answer.
I was seeing
Yes.
Chris's wheels turning in his head.
Yes. So, like, any substance, or just are you wanting like a certain thing, or just in general?
Just any substance out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it speaks to, if you're going to use these substances and break the law, it speaks to your judgment. And so for me, that's the starting point. You're showing poor decision-making and judgment. And I like to jump off high things into water. It's poor judgment in some people's mind. You handled a snake today. I think that's poor judgment. But that's my starting point, is judgment.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, just kind of go off of that. So, how long do you think it will take for a normal teenager that is friends with people that use, how long do you think it's going to take for them to start using? Just a normal teenager to start using whatever they are using.
Now, are you talking about more like tobacco products, like vapes, or like Delta 8 products, or like dangerous, like methamphetamines and heroin and that kind of thing?
Really, all of them, but the dangerous ones, how long do you think?
Well, and I say that just because, unfortunately, out here, in the streets, you see that a lot. The methamphetamines and heroin's kind of made a comeback. So, fortunately here in Pickens, knock on wood, we hopefully will never see that big of an issue in our schools or with our teens. But I will say, just in our investigations and things that we've seen, unfortunately, we have parents and friends and relatives and neighbors and other people that teenagers are around, and they see this, and unfortunately, believe it or not, there are some parents out there that are willing to kind of hand it over to a teenager because situations in their lives or whatever it may be. We've known a person that happened to at a very young age, and it was a sad story, and now that person cannot get away from it just because they've been doing it for so long. So I would think that hopefully right now our teenagers are probably not our biggest threat against other teenagers as far as methamphetamines and heroin and stuff goes. It's the adults in their lives, and that's that's a whole nother subject as far as addressing those problems. Of course, we go into homes sometimes and see those types of issues and concerns that we have, and we obviously get DSS involved and other resources involved to kind of step in and whatever we can do. But unfortunately, a lot of them have seen this for many, many years, and they think that it's normal almost. I think it's breaking that normal and kind of what y'all are doing here and getting that information out there to kind of open their eyes on that. There's more to world than just sitting at home and smoking methamphetamines or selling it or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think nationally, probably 20 years ago, gateways were like 14 and 15, and like Bureau of Justice statistics saying, sort of the entry age now is 11 and 12, and we have so many addictions that start in utero, where children are born and they're addicted and spending time in NICUs, and so they're already predisposed. And then with the learning disabilities and all that come with it, and that may be a factor as well with some of the rampant use of the really hard stuff. But the in utero is a real issue too. And that's the same thing with even tobacco products and alcohol during pregnancies.
Yeah. Do you know of any like resources for children affected by their parents' drug use?
I lean, obviously, your peers and people like y'all, this youth board, and I lean towards ecclesiastical settings. In the church setting, there are youth pastors, and there's secular counselors as well, and there are teachers. I talked about that, a connection to the adult world where you're jumping out of the youth culture. There are teachers and coaches and counselors in these schools that have given up a lot to be in those positions, and they love y'all. They love these students and will do anything for you. And they stand there ready every day to have that kind of relationship. And I think that's key. And there's police officers that that work and are active in their churches and active in in civic groups and that have a lot of experience as well. I think I'm thinking of Chris coaching last year, kids, and involved in the community and involved in church life. There's a lot out there with those kind of resources rather than, here's a pamphlet. I'm convinced it is a relational contact with someone in the adult world who is bringing you along. And even the school resource officers are ready to do that. What do you think?
Yes. And I would just say in my experience when I was doing, SRO work and juvenile investigations, I think most of my serious offenses that I investigated were brought to the attention of a peer or someone an adult in the school, probably, because people feel, especially, even as adults, we feel comfortable talking to people, and same way with teenagers, your friends, you probably feel more comfortable talking with someone at your school and your group of friends that you're close to, and that's usually where those things come to light. And usually it was a friend. I mean, that's a true friend to step up and say, they might not have seen it that way at that time, but for their friend to think enough that, hey, I need to say something to somebody, and it potentially saved their life in some of these cases. I mean, there were serious cases. And so, I would just, encourage y'all, to keep doing what you're doing and kind of, work in your community of teenagers in your schools or youth groups or out here in the community where you can see, different teenagers from different walks of life and things that's going on in their life, and maybe even training on things that like little indicators and things, because that's kind of things that we're trained on and our administrators. But you look at a school setting, you have one person, your school resource officer, that's kind of trained in kind of seeing these kind of indicators, and then your teachers as well and your administrators. So y'all are kind of the front line of possibly receiving that information before anybody does, and I guess how to handle it. Even if someone came to you, like one of your friends, and brought to your attention that something was going on at home or something was going on with another friend of theirs that was that knew that needed to be told to an adult and possibly even to law enforcement. Sometimes we're the last person people come running to. They'll tell everybody else what's going on before it gets to us, and what to do with it and how to respond to it.
I know that there are a lot, but is there any sort of, like you were saying, like pamphlet for children that might be scared to get police involved because of DSS, like so that they can just reach out and have a support to get through it?
think we hit it. It's
Yeah.
going to be your peers. So I'll ask, by your mere presence here, both of y'all, I'm assuming that y'all are, I don't see you vaping in front of me or anything like that. What keeps you all from making those bad judgment decisions? What is it? Is it your parents? Is it something you disappoint? Grandparent? Do you have a relationship with someone? What is it that keeps y'all?
The examples of people that I've read about or seen who have fallen to drug use.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you?
I have really two huge reasons. One, I'm scared of my parents. I'm
Good.
scared that if I was to
Excellent.
start, they would kill me.
Harm you. Yeah, I like that.
Not actually kill me,
Right,
but
I get it.
And then with me playing volleyball, my coaches have always said, well, if we catch you with this, you're going to be off the team. And volleyball has been my whole entire life. So, I mean, I don't want to just lose it to harming myself.
And I would say those are like both good motivations to do right. You know, like I'm motivated not to break the law. I'm motivated to not harm my body. I'm motivated to do these things. And unfortunately, I think that's where some of these, I guess, teenagers are lacking, and they're not involved in things that are keeping them kind of like accountability or motivated to do the right thing. And I mean, I guess asking, if that's a question as far as like, what can we do? Maybe get these people involved, these teenagers that, are using, involved in these types of things. And I know that I might be jumping ahead, but I know y'all have some plans this summer, right? Or this whole year.
Yeah.
And I think those are excellent because some of the things that y'all have plans to do are going to kind of encourage these people and hopefully educate them, and just maybe find friends that are going to look out for their best interest. And so I think like you want me to even hit on them? I'm going to say the movie night, I think, was coming up on May 21st. That's a Saturday. So I think that's the first event that y'all are having that we're partnering with y'all on. So I think that's going to be an excellent thing. And the other events you'll have planned for the rest of the year are good.
Yeah. And we will touch on some of the events that we have coming up later. Maybe not in this podcast, but later in some other episodes. So our final question, we just have to ask this. Do y'all have a lead on Elsa?
Unfortunately, we don't. Once it kind of got a little bit warmer, I think today was like 75. So we were told by an expert.
I've got a lead.
What's your lead?
Is
it classified?
like in a lot of like narcotics investigations, you follow the money. I'm following the weather. So in St. Louis, Missouri, last night, I think it was about 18 degrees. Obviously, we've got a warming trend here. I'd be looking in places like St. Louis, Missouri, Chicago, some of these other places. And, I mean, we'll work with probably the U.S. Marshals in terms of like a true task force effort to capture her. I would say, I mean, in terms of safety for the whole country, probably by May, I think we'll have her in custody.
It's a long time. How are people going to stay safe until then?
Well, we we follow the weather patterns, and we'll be able to tell where she's at, stay away from higher elevations where she tends to linger, some of the mountainous regions. And I think after St. Louis, I would expect some of the areas like the Rockies, and then probably if we don't catch her in May, I think we'll get her probably in June, maybe in Alaska.
Maybe she'll just let it go.
I don't think she'll let it go.
No.
She will not, and we will not.
We will not let it go.
No.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. So, we truly, truly appreciate you guys for your service and taking your time to come and be our guest.
Well, we appreciate y'all having us.
Great.
We are also very excited to hear that we get the opportunity to partner with the Pickens City Police Department in the future with our upcoming teen events for the county.
Movie night.
Movie night.
Movie night. We cannot wait, and for our listeners to make sure they keep up to date with all the upcoming events. Of course, our upcoming But They Don't episode release on our social media.
On Instagram and TikTok, find us at wearepcyb.
And on Facebook, search Pickens County Youth Board.
We appreciate our listeners and are excited to continue the sharing of this podcast with information for teens by teens.
I hope you guys have a great weekend.